before we get going on here, about basically I've got a list here, a finalized list of like that 5 questions about the art community in Occupy and the art community as a whole, just to tell you what it's about. And then I had like other independent questions about yourself if you want to talk a little like that.
We can just run the gamut, man.
So
we have like an hour's worth of video on there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me get the second page of the questions Joan had about like why you occupy things like that.
Is that recording right now?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I'm gonna go on the air now too.
Is the
Okay, yeah,
circle on there? Let me see.
we're live.
All right, cool.
Is that right? Flashing like that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I have no batteries.
it
If
is.
not,
I have batteries in my pocket. Oh. Hey, if it doesn't, if it shits the bed, then
Yeah, that
it
one
says
just
so.
goes to an SD card, a WAV file, so that one's really good.
Cool.
All right,
Cool,
so
we'll
let's
have
Because I can always
That's
email that
backed
to you
And
if
then
you
you could
need
email
it.
me,
Yeah.
so-
Yeah. All right. So we have myself, Neil Little Bear, and Joan from the Occupied Providence Journal today. We're interviewing Jay from the arts and culture community down in Occupied Providence in Burnside Park. How you doing today, Jay?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been a pretty productive day so far.
Good. Just a couple of quick basic questions before we get a little more in depth. How many are there in the arts and culture working group currently, approximately?
It's not really an approximate thing. People, it's like a filter in, you filter out when it's necessary. Because they kind of deconstructed the art and culture center that we had built, it's been a little bit on the lam, and it's kind of been metamorphing into different sorts of productive groups. We have a lot of steady materials that are still in the park that are open for anybody's use, but as far as coordinating them, we're trying to find out a way to get those, to make it easy for people to make or build wherever they want, and whatever expresses like the general tenor of the movement, while at the same time preserving the materials that we need to make them. Say the paint in sub-zero weather or like freezing weather, the paint ruins, and like say spray paint, it kills the CO2 in the cans, making the cans useless. So we have a lot of variables that we have to worry about
Would you
now.
say that water? Oh, sorry.
So it's a morphing process right now, currently, especially with the elements and the weather. It's kind
It
of
is.
breaking down and building back up.
And generally, like it's internally, the dynamics of the groups are changing. The dynamics, like how we interrelate between like coordinators is kind of changing, and so it's it's a work in progress always.
Speaking of which, then, do you want that leads segue into a second question of do you want to describe maybe briefly some of the projects that have been worked on or are going to be worked on and currently worked on?
Well, we started out with basically just wanting to have a way to get people who are coming through the park when it was warm to stop and feel free to express whatever grievances they had against the corruption and oppression in our upper echelons. And so, but then that kind of turned, well, when the Arlution came from RISD and sort of like occupied the occupation for a brief moment, actually it's still here, it transformed into a more professional outfit of like more professional works coming out. We have lots of banners that have been made.
Right, and for those of you listening or viewing that don't know, the Arlution was a project started by RISD students and the Occupied Providence Arts and Culture community. And
actually, the Arlution is strictly the jurisdiction of RISD.
It was RISD.
Occupation that the occupied the Arlution. The Arlution is actually an independent business.
Okay.
It actually belongs to Max Frieder. And he's just like a super supporter, and he kind of like adopted us, the People's Working Group.
Right, and it was, I believe, also a thesis project involved.
It is a thesis project.
Right.
It's also like he's right now in Costa Rica.
Yes, and folks, you could YouTube that name as well if you would like.
Totally could YouTube it.
He's out there already. Okay, so that's good. We touched base on some of the projects. You want to talk before we get more into the culture community? Why do you occupy? In general?
Well, basically, I've been sort of just for lack of a better word, like a vagabond my whole life. I'm like a musician traveling around, just trying to like figure out what my place is in life. and how I can affect the world to sort of affect more equality and justice. And I'd been like kind of trying to find my power in that sense, not feeling empowered to do anything about it because I didn't know where I could effectively get in. And so the occupation started on the first day of the first GA to even plan the occupation. I was coming down the hill, I just got back from Vermont, visiting my brother. And I walked by, I saw a friend of mine, Martin, sitting in front of the statue with a group of people. I stopped and asked Martin what's going on. And he told me about the global revolution. And I was like, this is where I need to be. And I stayed there.
What was the date of that?
October 1st.
Oh.
October 1st.
And I've been there ever since, except for I took a week off very recently.
Great, so that tells us a little about yourself. I actually had a similar experience as to walking into the park and staying just for the simple fact that it was that type of reality where it just was down to earth and made sense myself. So if we could then go into more what your expertise is, which was the art and culture community, particularly in Occupy Providence, to start off with, and then we'll lead to the art community in general. Could you describe a little more? I know we've already touched upon some of the projects, but the art community in Occupy Providence in general, for those who might not know.
Well, our community, we have several coordinators that sort of coalesced. The art tent kind of appeared when a large structure that had been donated to us blew over in the wind, and people just left it on the grounds and sort of didn't pick it up. And I was like, why did you just leave this here? This is totally like usable structure and it's lying on its side. So I took it apart myself, wrapped everything up and left it there for several days. And when nobody did anything with it, I was like, well, I'm gonna constitute this thing and make it usable. And so I took it and I was gonna make it like something totally selfish, just like build like a huge structure off my tent. And then my Tony Diss, whatever. He's the guy who actually founded the Occupy Providence homepage for the community. Okay. And he's like the precursor. He brought us all together. He's actually late to our first meeting, and people were pretty upset with him about that. I think he's a really great guy. But he came over and he kind of, like, I was gonna build a huge barn type thing in front of him. He turned it on its side and he was like, this is a better way to do this. And then we built it longer and he was like, well, this is awesome. Like, what are we gonna do with this? So, like, well, I don't know. And it didn't do anything for a while. So I sat down, and I honestly, I'm not a religious man, I'm a spiritual man. I prayed, I was like, yo, let's like give me a way to make this useful. I'm an artist at heart, like I'm a painter, I'm a musician, and like I build projects like these, like the one over there. So I was like, well, send me materials and people, God, and let's get this popping. And just like that, things started flooding in. We got a button maker and all sorts of silk screen materials just started to appear out of nowhere. Our friend, she brought like all sorts of canvases.
So that's a pretty profound answer. It seems like it was a manifestation, grassroots movement from within the Occupy movement itself.
Yeah, it just kind of appeared out of nowhere.
You seem to have played a big part in that, which is awesome, and I'm glad I'm able to talk to you about it.
Well, just basically I mitigated it. It was basically a lot of cleaning up the materials. Because people would love to come by and paint or make stuff, but then they just walk away. And
so you kind of organized what was already started, but needed help. It needed
you just gotta get put back in the boxes and put back in the tent, so it's not out in the elements. And that's basically
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talk about a little of the foundation of the group. What do you see? Not necessarily, but maybe as a visionary, what is the future of the art group, and how do you feel it will be defined?
Well, I mean, a friend of mine told me once that the First World War was won with bullets, the Second World War was won with missiles, but the Third World War is going to be won with anthropology, the study of man. I think you can best do that by the illustrations of art and culture, and art in and of itself really speaks to the heart and the spirit of people, and through abstractions will illustrate profound truths. And so that's how I feel we can make the biggest impact, and that's what I'm trying to get. So far, it's like a fledgling enterprise. I mean, the whole occupation in and of itself is still really young in comparison to most organizations that have been fighting this fight for a long time. And so we're still getting our legs underneath us, learning how to walk
When you say fighting this fight, what can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, the oppressive elements in our governance and in our society, which are like, you know, racism, sexism, gender bias, just like economic warfare, the way our physical economy has been taken from us.
So it sounds like
handicap-
social injustices.
social and economic injustice.
Economic.
Yeah,
Okay,
like
right.
legislative
Okay.
injustice.
I just wanted to elaborate to clarify that. And okay, so just with that said, that those are well-defined goals. Who are you trying to reach out to ultimately?
Well, generally I want just to sort of, if I do nothing, just shake somebody,
Okay.
anyone, and wake them up.
Good.
And really like, you know, like, I mean, one of my favorite books ever, had this crazy man, and he was totally a sociopath, but one of the things that about him was he was like, he was personable, and that's not the best thing about it. But also that, he didn't believe that any rules applied to him. And Commander Vims, who was like the main character in the books, his books by Terry Pratchett, and the main character, Commander Vims, was like, you know, people think these are sane, but he says, I find that the most sane people understand that none of the rules really apply to you. So really it's about your personal freedom, your freedom of expression and of being. I'm a libertarian, so basically I believe that, you know, what you do is your right, no matter what you're doing, as long as you're not hurting anyone, hurting anyone or the planet.
Okay.
You know, as long as you're not doing either one of those, you're fine. You know, and I'm not gonna, I may not agree with you, but I'm not gonna go out of my way to stop you or restrain you from doing it. Just don't hurt me, or hurt anyone else, or hurt yourself. Like,
Right. No, that's a nice
hurt
philosophy.
yourself all you
and
want. Cut yourself, you know.
What was
nail
the
yourself. I'm
the
sorry,
character's
it's a bad
name?
idea.
Was of the book, the character you're referring to was from the illustration?
Commander Vims.
Commander Vims. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That's a nice philosophy. Sounds like it's very doable. How do you feel the work you put in? And this is, it doesn't have to be a selfish question because I know it's not always about what you get out of things, but I just wanted to see what someone would think when I asked this. How do you feel the work you put into the community through artwork here at Occupy Providence is paying off or will pay off in the future?
Well, I feel like everyone who's involved with this movement now and then sticks it out into this culmination will be seen as the forerunners of a new sort of epoch of human history and human existence. Because what we're doing here, I think, it can be summed up as the formation of a new system of resources to get people to be independent of the oppressive system of resources, so that then we can actively not participate in it. And that way we take the power away from them. So that, like, because now, if you don't participate, you can't feed yourself. You don't have a home if you don't participate in this system. There's no one to support you, and you're seen sort of like you're relegated to like the fringe of society. And like what we're gonna do is change that. We're gonna break down the borders that keep people separated. Like, because like if you look at the dynamics of the camp, you have a lot of people that, you know, won't deal with certain people because of their external expression. You know, like say you're a juggalo, and I don't like juggalos, or you're a socialist, and I don't agree with socialists, or you're like just like a free-spirited douche, and like I don't like you, so I'm not going to work with you. But that keeps us from being productive and pursuing productive ends and actions. Like when I put on OccuStock at the beginning, I rub people the wrong way, and I'm not sure. I'm like, and honestly, I don't have a problem with that. Like I'm a certain sort of personality type, and if you can't get along with me, that's understandable because a lot of people have not been able to do that since I was a child. And so like, you know, I'm not really trying to force you to like me. But I really would just like if we can pursue good work, if it's good action.
And your answer leads to the complexity of the Occupy movement and the tasks that they face in general. My question to you would be not to question your ideals, but it sounds like you would like to change social and economic environments for people. But do you offer alternatives? I know it's early in the movement to get to a more ideal, suitable environment for people.
Like I said, I feel like it's the formation of the system of resources. Like say at the camp, we all eat the same food, generally. We all share the same resources, but the thing that people, like when we first started and we had the art, like the food tent up and the media tent up, and they just took them down, mainly because there were a lot of people coming through who did not participate in the occupation, but definitely wanted to get down on our resources. and then got a little bit hostile when we wouldn't put forward the resources when they deemed it was necessary to have them out. So they were like, well, we're going to shut that down.
Almost a mirror image of society.
Yeah. And but see, there's nothing wrong with sharing your resources as long, in my mind, if somebody's being productive within the framework. So like we're occupied.
Right, so it
Providence.
seems like a give and take where
it gives. So like say gym.
an alternative just isn't free for everyone because no one thinks that would work.
Nothing's free, man.
Right.
Everything in life takes work. Like even apples take gestation and proper sunlight and water in order to freaking grow so we can eat them. And even if they grow in nature, and it seems like it doesn't take any human involvement for them to grow, it actually takes work for them to be there. So like nothing should be free, and nothing is a handout. So even if you just come by and like pick up trash, or like Jim just fixes stuff, and Jim loves fixing stuff. Like
Right.
we needed a handyman forever, and Jim showed up, and Jim's fixes stuff, and he's an installment here now. Like I love Jim, and he's like a perfect example of how, like, you know what, like you might not agree with him and his methods, but still he's productive and he's not combative.
Right, and his example of a person at Occupy, at work, and is the exact illustration that I'm trying to draw out of the art and community culture in Occupy, because a lot of times arts and culture in society are appreciated but not necessarily always recognized for their true power and ability and abundance. There is an abundance of art and culture in this community and in this country and in this world already that exists, and not oftentimes, I don't think, light's shed upon it.
Well, you know what? That's another thing about this occupation. It's like the evolution of the way we protest, because usually it's like marching in the streets, screaming with signs. But we're gonna now. I mean, in my mind, it's gonna turn into like a much more spectacular affair, where there's singing, dancing, all sorts of different sorts of jubilant exercises, as well as just the display of information as to why we're here. Not just yelling "Bank of America, bad for America." Who are we? Who are we? Occupy PVE. First of all, I feel like that's a little bit egotistical. It's like shouting our name over and over again. Well, we're here. They know who we are now. You all you do is say it once, and then you can be like, "Who are they? Who are they? They made past NDAA." You know, it's like, and what's that? You know, then you have to elaborate on these things and break people in, because as we saw today, going through, there isn't a lot of people. There isn't a lot of knowledge going around about it. So we can like art communities that are not being like appreciated come together with us, and we form like megalithic like demonstrations that people can't ignore. And, and there's like different ways of like incorporating all sorts of different elements. And so, and also, man, people have been like, they've been force-fed media, mainstream media that is not conducive to like, independent art. And that's why independent artists suffer. Because if they don't toe the party line and get in there with those high-powered, like mainstream executive branches of, entertainment, they end up being relegated to, once again, the fringe. And the fringe ends up being populated by those same amounts of people, the undesirables.
Or if there's not even any room for them in entertainment, it's not even an option, and there's just no resources, like you said, is what's needed for change, is resources for people. And there are resources and there are people, so it's bridging that gap, I think, that will get us there.
Well, you see what like artists do in communities now. They form communes. They come together because they don't make so much money doing art. They form communes and they share what they have, and they live in like beautiful little communities, and their houses are gorgeous. They build like stages in them. They have plays, and they're super sociable. Usually they're friendly and they're accepting. And that's what artists do just by themselves. And so we should break that out of just the artist community and work that into more areas and aspects of our community, like say health and sanitation, and other public works, and other things that are just generally necessary, like teachers, and maybe have co-op schools that are based around communal living, so that when kids are like, when the schools are getting shut down and children don't have anywhere to go and get learned or get educations.
So you do have alternatives, right? It's ending the arbitration of society.
Yeah.
And you're providing alternatives, some that already exist and that are good ideas that could be mirror imaged and replicated.
Really empowering people to come up with these options on their own. in their code, but a general it might be a general framework that they could use to build around and generate their own ideas, which is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And but yeah, generally just empower us to take care of our own existence, take responsibility for our own existence from these people who feel like they own our existences, and as such can either kill us or change us at their own behest, which is total bullshit.
So basically, standing as part of the Occupy Providence Art and Culture Committee, it sounds like that you are working towards these goals and change, which I may segue into another question about a revolutionary thought on art. And I want to bring this perspective in because you do see the need for change, which is what brought you here from day one. I want to ask how your artwork and the artwork of the community of Occupy, and maybe in general, if you want to talk about the overall community, how the art of the world, and I know we have already kind of touched base on this already, but if you could elaborate, how the art of yourself and of the world can revolutionize the world, how art can do that.
Well, basically, in my mind, the art here is the building of a physical economy to pull resources out of the oppressive economy and put resources into the new, inclusive, and non-oppressive economy. And at the same time, empower people to follow their muse. And that could be anything. If you want to build engines, and that's what you do, you're like, I love tinkering with toys, or you want to shovel crap in a certain way, you're never encouraged to do that. And you can feel encouraged to do that and express yourself, however, in whatever way you want. It's just a way of empowering us to do what we need for ourselves.
To break, it sounds like you want to break the oligopoly chain of the corporate America money, just mainstream, how it just all flows into these big pockets, and give a little more creativity and ability to the people to let them follow their dreams more. The dreams that people don't even bother pursuing because they don't feel that they can or know how to or have the capability or the trust in themselves because society has said this is the arbitrary life that you live in.
Yes, exactly. As well as, back in the day, when the Hebrews in the Hebrew communities, when they would get $1 in their community, it would touch 12 other hands before it left the community. And that's how they built. They built their communities by, building themselves first. Whereas nowadays, you get money and you go buy something that's made by some corporate firm that does not give a shit about your community. What they're selling you is probably poisonous to your body, and where they're getting it from is totally might even have antagonistic leanings towards your community. And so you don't know where your money is going.
May not even have your best interests in hand. Whereas,
exactly.
Yeah, whereas someone that you buy local from, or other fairs that incorporate local vendors, take more time and care and effort into their products. For you as or services, whatever it may be, where a monetary exchange would take place.
Yeah, and they know you, and they know your children. Their children probably go to school with your children, and so it's another way of taking care of each other and growing as a community and becoming more congealed. Right now, we have so many borders and boundaries up between us based on how we identify ourselves, and that's the thing about the occupation is that we're the 99%. We're not just saying that we are the ones that are being oppressed by those who have everything, who kind of dictate these borders, what it is to be this or that, and why you should be either against or for that, either side. These aren't arbitrary definitions. I mean, these are arbitrary definitions that somebody just came up with, and there's really no reason to hate anyone based on any sort of outward effect, even a deformity, disease, or sexual preference. There's no real reason besides your own boundaries and your own inability to be step out of those those restrictions, those mental blockages, and be if being the way I am, if somebody were to say to me that one of these characteristics of mine were so repulsive that I should be hated, how would I feel? And that's what we're trying to do. And that's the thing about the park. And like I said, the internal dynamics where, you have to face this. Whereas we're in this park, we're all together, we're all oppressed. How do we stop oppressing each other? How do I get past these boundaries I have in my mind and in my heart that keep me from just saying like, yo, I'm you, you're me. Except we're different expressions. But I am totally for you being your expression. And I hope that you're for me being my expression. And I would fight for your right to be your expression, and I hope that you would fight for my right to be mine.
True, and that's why I'm hoping to get the message out. Is there any outreaches that you have right now that you would either want to, shout outs, thank people so far for the occupation, or ways to invite people into the arts and culture community, or just to come to occupy either through the internet or the People's Park? Are there any outreaches you have right now that you can think of?
I would like to thank Joy, Bear, Jacob, Alex Close, Susan, Mel, all those people that have totally contributed to the metamorphosis of this project, whether it was to add something to it or add and detract something or just plain detract. Sarah Grimm, we love her, we want to see her again, we hope she's well. Matt Weisberg, great guy. Max Levy-Frieder, the Art Illusion, those guys were super inspirational and really, they put a lot of
That was a good period of
fire.
time, it was.
It's still happening now. It's the cold, man, it's a dampener.
But what about for newcomers, maybe students in Providence?
Students are welcome.
How would they get in touch with you? Do they catch you on YouTube here, maybe, if we post this? Or?
Yeah, post this on YouTube. Catch me online on Facebook, Jay Wills. OccuStock is still up and running Facebook page, even though it doesn't get much play now because I haven't been organizing out of OccuStock. It's been the Art Illusion, People's Art and Culture Center, and what we're going to be. We just got in with Fet Music, the Fet Music venue up the street, and so we're going to be putting on many more musical shows going forward from here. Right.
So, what could a newcomer to Occupy, particularly the Arts and Culture Society, what could they look forward to? Maybe experiencing is one of the reasons why they would want to come down, on top of just change overall. But what some benefits of, like you said, about local networking?
Liberation. A person that comes around us and stays for any sort of time will feel totally liberated after some point to express themselves in whatever manner they see fit. We walk around the majority of the weekend with our faces painted like madmen, running around doing whatever. The other day we had masks on and capes, and we were running on the roofs of some building like wild people. And that's what we are.
Like Goonies. Like Goonies. We're like Goonies.
Seriously, we
so come have a good time with Jay. You can hit him up on Facebook, like you said.
We would also like it if spiritual leaders, churches, mosques, synagogues, pagans, come to the park and let's have a conversation about the things that unite the spirit.
Let's
rather
talk
than
about
divide the spirit.
Yeah, unite.
Because the spirit is a big part of the art and culture tent. If you ask me, creative work is a movement of the spirit. Inspiration is inward movement of the spirit. So if we are the art and culture tent, then there should be a good dialogue.
Right, and that's the people's fight that you just talked about, where if communities and societies can recognize each other and live with each other and look each other in eye to eye, not only that, but not fight against each other, but for each other. If they can fight for each other, and that's the way to do it, is through meeting and talking and realizing your similarities and differences.
Not only that, but that one of the main reasons why we fight each other is because of these religious ideologies. And like Christians fight Christians, Christians fight Muslims, Christians fight Jews, Jews fight Muslims, Muslims fight Christians and Jews, and they all
and so on,
and
it goes way beyond into many other religions as well, over time in history,
It's like the most repressive system that we've had since its institution, besides debt and money. Religion has been a great divider among people, but that has got to change, and that's one of the main things that have to change. And our addiction to money, and our need for money, because money doesn't make trees grow fruit. Money doesn't really make man build roads or buildings. Like sustenance, survival, that makes man build buildings. and build cars. You know, the natural evolution dictates that man should start walking and then move effortlessly. That just makes sense to me. And it's not necessarily because of like capitalism or anything like that these things have come about. And sure, they've here, but you know, capitalism made it so that, you know, oil and like fossil fuels have dominated the world markets for hundreds of years because
In the steel industry.
yeah, steel, and a lot of these things are horrible for the earth, and we've had like alternatives forever, but you know, money says that these guys want their pockets laced and they want them to be continuously laced, and so like.
Right, but getting back to your other point about the individuality's view, one could say that capitalism has also fought for people's freedom over time, which is where we would respectively agree to disagree on that simple viewpoint. But respective of what you're saying, there are things such as deforestation, clear cutting, and the sheer waste of these fossil fuels when alternatives are not rapidly being produced are valid points. But to say it's strictly political, not necessarily. I think it's environmental as well, and it's not as cut and dry as that.
Corporate capitalism.
But right, it could be
Yes.
identified as areas of capitalism exploiting markets. There's no question about that.
With only capitalism, only a monetary system to give people their need or that gumption to go create things, that creates an imbalance. People should be willing to go and create what they need or want just from the need or want for that thing.
Instead of just sheer profit margin.
Exactly.
They have to weigh in other factors.
Love. Like, how does this help the person next to me? The man next door needs a new door on his house.
They've clear cut trees
charge him
that
to make
take
that door, or just gonna
thousands
get
of
the door?
years to grow back, and these are trees that were just nature's beauty that are gone now.
Yeah.
And even the rainforest in South America, and that could be cures for medicinal purposes to save people's lives that are being demolished.
For the love of a dollar, for the love of money, people.
But there are,
destroying
and there
like-
are society nonprofits in place already and other community outreach programs that exist as environmentalists. And I think as part of Occupy, if we can start focusing on matters big and small with other outreach alliances and coalitions that already are in place and manifest more abundance through that and conservation. Like you said, how you started the art movement was through conservation of the park. It was there, you conserved it, and now after that the art illusion and so on and so forth. And like I said, people can just keep, and there's more they can find out. And
I sat and I prayed. That's like totally not. I'm not ashamed to say that I pray.
no, there's no reason to be, because that's your right and that's your choice, and there's no reason to be ashamed of anything that you do. Like you said, as long as you're not hurting someone else. I almost have the same type of philosophy that you do. And it's a lot of the golden rule too. Do unto others as you would have done to yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
no, those are words to live by. Absolutely, man. Is how do you feel? What could help the? I don't know if I asked. I don't think I did. But what would help the arts and culture society in the Occupy Providence movement? Whether it be donations, artists, participation, events, functions, leadership, anything. What can you think of that would help you and the art community in Providence here?
Well, what could really help us is if the people would come and see the things that we put together.
Okay.
We put a lot of time and effort into the things that like we compile for people, and it's like it's a work in progress, admittedly. But at the same time, we're not doing it for ourselves. We don't do it because we like to be out in the streets, like running around screaming, even though it's lots of fun.
Right.
It's lots of fun. But actually, it's kind of dangerous, especially with the National Defense Office.
So you would like people to come see the artwork in the park.
Come see the artwork
Yeah,
in the park.
yeah.
Come see the artwork in the streets in the form of demonstrations.
Yep.
And
Right.
understand
So
why we're
come
here.
check out on Facebook, see on Occupy Providence, see when events are happening. The rallies, they're peaceful rallies, they're marches. We don't protest violently or angrily. We're a peaceful movement. It's okay to come check it out, and Absolutely.
We're not angry with the population.
Right.
There's like nobody really
I think that
in
point
Rhode
needs to
Island.
get across. Maybe that's a good way. Maybe you could clarify about how we are a peaceful movement and we do protest, but not violently. And that I think that message might need to get out to the mainstream.
Well, I think people mainly, like, if they think we're angry, dirty hippies, and it might be mistaking our anger for passion and like a need to protect. Like, there's a difference between fighting to harm something and fighting to protect something. One of those is based out of like the need to destroy, and one of those is like creative, sustaining force. And one of those is like I forget who said it, but it's like one guy said, if I want to fight, you know, and I like fighting, but I fight with the fist of love. It's a fist of hate. But the
Sage
fist of
Francis.
love- Sage Francis!
He said that.
Sage Francis said that.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, I use the fist of love.
My love fist is mightier
So we
than
put
the
our
hate
fist in the
fist.
air.
Right. So
Yeah.
so what would help you
Love
is what
fist.
you're saying is being recognized. You want the 99%, which is a big part of the Occupy movement, to embrace the Occupy movement by recognizing the artwork, by recognizing the love, the respect, the fight for freedom and justice and equality.
Yes. Well, actually, I feel like the artwork in and of itself has its merits based on how a person sees it relatively.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a relative thing. I feel like it's really a call for people who have similar skills to feel free to follow suit and make their own art and express their own voice, because that's what it's really about. Expression of your own personal, like, whatever. Like, if you have a gripe, express it. If you feel like things are fine, I might not agree, express it anyway. Because people need to see that.
Yep.
People need to know what you feel. And so, like, because no one's going to know unless you say it or show it somehow. You know, it's like, even if it's abstractions, it's going to affect somebody in, like, a profound way.
Right.
And, like, what we really need are people who've been here, who have made, who have, like, presences in the communities around us and in, like, say, internationally or nationally or just locally, to step into the fray, because it's going down this year. This year is the year where it's supposed to be going down. Apparently the Mayans even predicted it. Now, that's not like the Bible. That's Mayans. I'm not saying that the Mayans had like a carte blanche on predictions, but I'm saying, like, everyone is sort of like feeling this energy building up. You see it in people's faces. They know something's happening. They don't know what's happening, and they don't know what to do about it. They're looking for some leadership. Empower yourself to lead. And if you're a leader, empower yourself to get in there and grab these minds that are open, these hearts that are open, but not sure which way to go. Grab them by the hand and pull them. Pull them in and be like, yes, what do you do? What are you good at? Here, delegate something for them. And because of their love for you, their affinity for your work, it's gonna empower them. And next thing you know, they'll be delegating their friends who don't know what to do or just starting to resonate. And next thing you know, it's a flood. It's a flood. We've got to flood the streets with this new paradigm. Flood the mass consciousness with a new paradigm of existence.
No, that's good, because it seems what I read about a little online about the Occupy movement is that the resources of people are there.
Mm-hmm.
The time for change is now.
Right now.
Right now. And what it is getting the message out there clearly, peacefully, so people can understand it, they can recognize it. It's not a one-statement message. There's a lot of change that people want to take place, and that's a good message to get out there, to start already to recognize what's happening in the movement. It's already being developed. What do you hope to see define the art community going forward?
The art community, in my mind, is going to break into different mediums. We started out a lot with paint and solid things. We're going to go more digital. Also, we're going to get out of this park and into the communities with our messages, because it's kind of hard to get people out of their communities when it's cold. So for the winter, I mean, like billboards and posters are going to be going up in the surrounding neighborhoods, and okay, Fox. The surrounding neighborhoods and it's surrounding consumer centers, because that's where you find them.
So a little bit more of an outreach
Approximately,
a little bit more of an outreach into the communities, maybe even satellite areas of Providence ultimately too.
Because for your average man, this is red pill, blue pill time.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not. You don't have a choice. You either take the pill, one pill or the other. But when you go to sleep, you might not be like might not be the same kind of sleep that you're hoping for. I mean, but I don't think there is even an option. The way things have been set up right now, for people to not take responsibility for their
So the change sounds a lot of like the end of corruption, and the alternative is reality, which is very doable. And it's almost not even to the point where I would have to continuously ask you, because the average individual, I think, already can see the vision of the future just from what we've already discussed about.
Yeah.
So that kind of wraps it up. I want to ask you though, if there's anything else you'd like to add about Occupy, about yourself in general, or any visions of hope for the future. And I do want to thank you on myself and Joan from the Occupied Providence Journal today.
Well, you know what? I would like to say that we have some pretty shrewd businessmen in our governance in Providence. If you were to look at the majority of occupations around the world, and especially in America, they've been met with some pretty aggressive brutality from the authorities, and we haven't really experienced it here. And it's kind of like maybe people feel like they don't know why we're here, because they don't see what they see on TV here. And I'm going to say that people don't wait for them to start busting heads. Don't wait for them to start going door to door and dragging people away. Get out, get into the fight. Make yourself aware, get yourself informed, protect yourself and your family, and be prepared. Make sure you're prepared. Even if you're not going to get in the fight, or you're not going to fight for your rights or anyone else's rights, make sure you're prepared. Because we don't want to, even though in my mind, and
Do you want to give people some direction on that, just a little bit about maybe SOPR and the National Defense Authorization Act, just quickly, that's something they can look up online so they can read about, just to start giving them snippets to get informed about what people are fighting against right now?
Well, okay, so SOPA is a Stop Online Piracy Act. It basically gives the American government the right to go and look at what you've been looking at online.
Right,
And
which many of the major corporations such as Google oppose, and Apple. That there are many corporations already opposed to it, on top of just Occupied. There's a major protest on this law going into effect.
That's true, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be going into effect, and which leads into the National Defense Authorization Act, which says that American civilians, suspected of being terrorists, can be detained indefinitely and shipped around to detention camps around the world, and then tried before military tribunals, even though they're civilians. And so, the way they define terrorists is kind of shifty, kind of really shady. It's say things like, if you buy things with cash, that's suspected terrorist activity,
It sounds like too much interpretation and not enough Bill of Rights. So those are two things, folks, that we've been kicking around Occupy Providence for a while, that we've been trying to wrap our heads around, and definitely cannot. If you want to Google those or look them up online, find out more information, if this reaches you on YouTube or on the internet, hopefully, maybe if we can get some mass media production of this out there, not mass media, but our own media rather. And I want to thank Jay and all the contributors today for this interview.
You're welcome.
All right,
My pleasure.
awesome.
That was beautiful.
Good.